administration. And you know, as I said before, my brother lived down the block from Bill and Kathy. We knew Kathy when she was fighting in local government. We knew Kathy, and we're proud of Kathy when she served in Congress. And we are so proud of what Kathy is doing as your lieutenant governor. And I'm so proud to nominate her moving forward. You have a fantastic lieutenant governor. And you know, I've not only admired Andrew Cuomo, I have admired the Cuomo family since my youth. And I've admired what they stood for and what they fought for since I was a kid. You know, we often have debates about what wing of the Democratic Party we belong to. And I used to work, my original political mentor was a guy named Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy, the liberal lion of the Senate. He taught me one thing. He said, Tom, when someone asks you what wing of the Democratic Party you're from, tell them you're from the accomplishments wing of the Democratic Party because you want to get stuff done. Now, he used a different S word than stuff, but I know that Governor Cuomo never swears, so I didn't want to use that word in this company. But you know, what I've grown to love about Andrew Cuomo is he understands that governance isn't about speechifying. It's about making a real difference in people's lives. New Yorkers don't want rhetoric, they want results. That's what Andrew Cuomo has delivered. Results. Results that have improved people's lives. Marriage equality. A $15 minimum wage. One of the strongest paid leave laws in the United States. When I was labor secretary, I remember traveling in January, I think of 2016, here in New York, when the governor said, we're going to do two things this year. We're going to do paid leave and $15 minimum wage. And I thought to myself, well, if you get one, I'd call that a pretty darn good result. And you all got both, thanks to Governor Cuomo, Lieutenant Governor, and people in this room. Thank you for your leadership there. Some of the most meaningful anti-sexual harassment laws in the United States came from New York State. One of the first states to move forward and expand Medicaid after the Supreme Court decision, New York State. Fighting for unions, understanding that when unions succeed, the middle class succeeds. That's Andrew Cuomo. That's why he signed that law into place. Protecting union membership in those public sector workplaces. And make no mistake about it, the Republicans want to end the labor movement. They believe that, you know what? They don't want you to have a seat at the table. My good friend Lee Saunders always said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And Republicans want the labor movement to be on the menu. And Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul and all the Democrats in this room are saying hell no to that. And we're fighting for the labor movement. We've been doing it. Investing in education. Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul have been doing that. One of my favorite visits to New York was to Brooklyn to a school called P-Tech. 6-year high school. Gave opportunities for young people to get access to the skills they need to punch their ticket to the middle class. It was such an impressive program. President Obama came. We expanded it through investments at the Department of Labor. And the state that has expanded it the most in the United States is the great state of New York. Putting those values into action. Making sure that higher ed is accessible to everybody. Making sure we eliminate the term educational mortgage from the lexicon of our young people. Making sure we're fighting for dreamers. Los soñadores son una categoría de personas que son tan importantes para el futuro de Nueva York. Andrew Cuomo cada día está trabajando, está luchando para los soñadores. He will continue to fight for the dreamers because he understands that Lady Liberty is right at our door. And he understands that there's this other New Yorker in Washington that's giving a bad name to New York values, and we're not going to let that happen, are we? No, we're not. He understands the critical importance of creating jobs, and jobs you have created. One of my favorite trips as labor secretary was to Central New York, to your nanotech corridor. And I remember talking to a mother there, and she said, you know what, Tom? My biggest fear as a mom was that my kids were going to have to leave when they grew up. And I don't have that fear anymore because we're growing jobs right here. I can see my grandchildren. That's what governance is about, results. And you've been delivering results. And you've been delivering results that have made people's lives better. That's why Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul are charter members of the accomplishments wing of the Democratic Party. And that's why I'm proud to endorse them. I'm proud to endorse your Attorney General nominee. I'm proud to endorse Tom DiNapoli. I'm proud to move forward with you. And you know what, folks? We've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of work to do, but I'm here to tell you we can do it. Across this country, the new Democratic Party, we are organizing everywhere. We are mobilizing everywhere, and we're making history everywhere. Just 2 days ago in Georgia, the first African-American woman was nominated to be a governor. And folks, en Texas, la primera latina en los Estados Unidos fue nominada para gobernador. So in one day, we made history in 2 states. The first Latina in Texas, the first African-American woman in Georgia. And you know what, folks? We're continuing to win everywhere, and we will continue to win everywhere. 9 days ago in Pennsylvania, we saw tremendous activity. At the beginning of 2018, Democrats held 5 out of the 18 House seats. In the end of the year, we could hold as many as 13 out of the 18 House seats. That's how we take back America. And we can do the same things here in New York. We've got more work to do, but we need all hands on deck because this is a where were you moment in our nation's journey to form a more perfect union. We can reclaim seats in Congress. We've got to put Chris Collins out of work, my friends, because Chris Collins and ethics are mutually exclusive terms. I sued him when I was the head of the Civil Rights Division. He was a terrible county executive. He's a terrible member of Congress, and we need to defeat him, and we can win elsewhere in this state. And the key to our success is organizing everywhere and leading with our values everywhere. That's exactly what Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul have been doing throughout their tenure. So from Buffalo to Brooklyn and the Bronx, from Syracuse to Staten Island, from Utica to Uniondale, we can win when we organize here, folks. I remember coming here with Jay Jacobs, who I know is here somewhere, right in front. I remember he introduced me to a woman named Christine Pellegrino. They said she couldn't win, an educator, I think in the 9th Assembly District, if my memory serves me. They said she couldn't win. It was beat red Trump country. What happened? She won because she organized. She's a great candidate, and she led with her values. That's how we win in New York. That's why Andrew Cuomo is going to win again. And the most important thing we can do is continue this movement forward. Because you know what, folks? This is a where were you moment in our nation's journey to form a more perfect union. And New York State, this isn't simply an election of importance to the great residents of New York State. This is an election of importance to America. Because you have been setting the tone of what we can do when we have progressive leaders. What we can do, and imagine what we can do more when we take over the state Senate in New York and have a working majority. Imagine what else we can do when we do that. And I know we will do that this year when we organize and organize everywhere. And I want to make sure you know healthy competition. You know, your folks in Pennsylvania are working hard to make sure we take back some House seats, and I know you'll do the same here because it is an all-hands-on-deck enterprise. And I am confident that 2018, the year of the woman across America, the year in which our progressive values come back, the year in which we send a very strong message across the country. Somos los Estados Unidos, no somos los Estados divididos. We are the United States of America, not the divided states of America. And an individual, and that is why, my friends, I leave you with this is a quote that someone said at a convention. a while ago. Here we are at this convention to remind ourselves where we come from and to claim the future for ourselves and for our children. Today, our great Democratic Party, which saved this nation from depression, from fascism, from racism, from corruption, is called upon to do it again. This time to save the nation from confusion and division, from the threat of fiscal disaster, and most of all, from a fear of nuclear holocaust. This is not going to be easy. We must win the case on the merits. We must get the American people and the American public to look past the glitter, beyond the showmanship, to the reality, the hard substance of things. We must unite so that the entire nation can unite. The remarkable words of a remarkable man, Mario Cuomo, in 1984. A remarkable man who not only was a remarkable leader, but a remarkable father, whose son has followed in his footsteps and built a New York that we can be proud of, and I know his father is proud of, and that is why I am so proud to have endorsed this governor to be your next governor for a third term, because we know there's unfinished business. There always is in our journey to form a more perfect union. And there is no one I can think of as I introduce our next speaker that can talk about the unfinished business of America more eloquently than the Vice President of the United States. He'll always be my Vice President. I present to you Vice President Joe Biden.
How are you? Nice to see you all. It's good to be back in New York. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I know you think I've been around long enough to know Adlai Stevenson the Elder, but he had a famous expression. He said, "Flattery is fine as long as you don't inhale." Well, I'm not inhaling. I just want you to know. It's great to see you all. I want to set the record straight. I came for one simple reason: Matilda Cuomo. Now, I tell you what, I was telling the Gov, he and I won the gene pool lottery. We were both raised by mothers that every kid in the neighborhood wished had been their mother. And I want to tell you, I was thinking on the way up, Matilda, I think I told you this when I saw you in the back, you got a great family, Margaret, the doc. And by the way, she's doing a hell of a job. And Maria, and I'm going to leave somebody out, Chris and Andrew. And I was thinking about this. You made it to the National Women's Hall of Fame. And I was thinking, just having Mario, Chris, and Andrew, you deserve it. You earned it. You earned it big. Folks, all the time, and I know as both someone who's run for public office a few times and had a son who ran and won for public office, it's a hell of a lot easier being the candidate than having someone you love and adore as part of your soul be the candidate. It's hard to stand there and watch. It's hard to stand there sometimes when they're under assault. But I tell you what, you have been, as that old song goes, you've been the wind beneath their wings. You've done an incredible job, I tell you. Thank you. Thank you. You know, just like his son Andrew's father, Mario, had a big, expansive heart. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again publicly again, but I said it over 12 years ago. I've been involved in public life for a while. I've met a number of really impressive women and men. There's only one that I ever met that I looked at and reminded me of my days back playing football, when you look across the aisle and you look in the guy the eye of the linebacker. He'd look at you and you knew whether he knew that you knew he could kick your rear end. Well, Mario Cuomo was the only person I've ever been engaged with politically I thought was better than me. And I mean that sincerely. And that sounds like a strange thing to say, because if you have to, when you run for office, you have to believe you have a capacity to do something good. And whenever I see Andrew, I think of my son Bo. They served together as attorneys general, and I'm eternally grateful, Andrew, for your friendship to my son Bo. You each bore a heavy burden, having fathers who were relatively well known. One of the truest things George W. Bush ever said was, they said, well, what's it like having your father as a former president? He said, well, one thing I know for sure, I inherit all his enemies and only some of his friends. So they each bore a heavy burden. But my dad had an expression, and he really did. He'd say, you know your success as a father when you turn and look at your child and realize they turned out better than you. Both Mario and I have been successes. And I think, if you excuse the point of personal privilege, as we used to say in the Senate, that our families have a lot in common. We were raised in homes, one Italian, one Irish, where we were taught that the greatest sin anyone could commit, and I mean this literally, was the abuse of power, whether it was government abusing power, or the abuse of economic power, or physical power. It was the ultimate sin. We were taught we had an obligation to speak out and speak up when we ever saw that abuse, because everyone, and I mean everyone, is entitled to be treated with dignity. We were taught that no one's better than us, but everyone is our equal. That we can be anything we dreamed of, and that ordinary people can and have done extraordinary things. My mom used to say courage is the greatest virtue of all, because upon it rests every other virtue. Used to say, without courage, you can't love with abandon. My dad used to always talk about dignity and the dignity of work. When we moved from Scranton, when I was a kid, because there were no jobs, if you listen to Barack, you'd think I climbed out of a coal mine in Scranton with a lunch bucket. But my dad was a white-collar worker. There was just no one to sell anything to after the economy collapsed. We moved to Delaware. But my siblings and I heard, if we heard it once, we heard it 20 times. He used to say when anyone would lose a job, he'd say, Joe, remember, a job is about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about your place in the community. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay. That's what we're taught. We're taught that, like all of you, that everyone, regardless of their religion, their culture, their national origin, their race, their gender preference, they deserve to be treated and given a shot. And if given a chance, just a chance, the American people have never, ever, ever let their country down. Andrew learned these lessons at his father's table in Queens, and I learned at my grandpa's table in Scranton and my dad's in Claymont, Delaware. You know, when it gets right down to it, it's all about decency and respect, which is so lacking in our politics of today. It may seem strange to quote a conservative columnist, but David Brooks, I think, said it best. He said, there's an invisible moral fabric in America that holds up our society, allows our Constitution to function. That moral fabric consists of customs and norms that have allowed us to be the nation we are. Decency, honesty, dignity and respect, giving hate no safe harbor, leaving no one behind, and understanding that as Americans, we're part of something much bigger than ourselves. Most of what we learned was by watching our parents. I suspect the same for you. They taught by example, and so much of it became clear it wasn't complicated. I remember watching your husband, Matilda, in a debate. I can't remember which office it was for, but it was a debate, and I think it was a governor's race. And he was on a stage, and there were bleachers, like 4 or 5 rows on either side of him, because those are the folks who were going to ask questions when the debate was finished. And the governor turned, maybe he wasn't governor, and I can't even remember, but Mario turned and took a question from a man in the top row. A vivid memory. And the guy said, I understand, I'm paraphrasing, I understand that you are really soft on homosexuality and gays. And your husband looked at him and said, what would you do, sir, if your son came home and said he was gay? And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I'd kick him out of my house. And he said, what I would do is I would hug him, give him a kiss, and tell him I loved him. That was before anybody was talking about it. Everybody talked about evolving. I remember when I was 17 years old, stopping to get an application to be a lifeguard in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is a big public swimming pool, the black community. As I got out of the car, my dad was dropping me off, and two guys in the corner, if you know anything about Delaware, the corporate capital of the world is a place called Rodney Square, where the famous Chancery Court is. And 2 gentlemen dressed in suits leaned over at that stoplight and kissed one another and went in a different direction, one to the DuPont building, one to the Hercules building. And I turned and looked at my dad. And all he did was look at me and said, it's simple, honey. They love each other. They love each other. The most complicated things about human interaction have never been really complicated the way we were raised, nor have they been all that complicated for the Democratic Party, because we've been made up of, we know why we're who we are. You can't define who an American is based on their race or ethnicity or culture, anything, other than a basic, unarticulated commitment to a value set. As corny as we hold these truths self-evident, that all men are created equal. That's not how they'd say it. But they know. They know what's made us who we are. And folks, the fact of the matter is, think back. What made you become a Democrat in the first place? What made you choose? Maybe you were born into a household that was a Democratic household. Maybe a lot of reasons. But why did you stay a Democrat? Because you basically believe everybody is entitled to be treated fairly. Basically because you think that everybody deserves a shot. And you think ordinary people can do pretty extraordinary things. You know, I kid and say if there were a Constitutional Convention held again today, and the representatives were from the congressional parties, and there was a motion saying that no one could vote in America unless they had a college degree, my guess is the Republicans would vote for it. They don't have much faith in ordinary people. And they demonstrate by the way they act, they don't care a whole lot about it. They don't understand why we're who we are. And you know, I grew up imbued with the notion that the middle class is not a number. We used to have these debates with some of the economists who worked for me in the White House. You'd say middle class, they'd say $50,240 or $53,000. That's not middle class. Middle class is a value set. It's being able to own your own home and not have to rent it if you have a chance. It's being able to send your kid to a park where you know they're going to come home safely. Send them to a local public high school that if they do well, they can get into college. If they get to college, somehow you'll figure out how to pay for it. And being able to take care of your geriatric mom after your dad dies and hope your children never have to care for you. That's what the middle class has been in America. And guess what? We know the neighborhoods we come from, nothing's guaranteed in life. But one thing we do expect is government exists to guarantee that there's a level playing field, that everybody gets a shot. Just a shot, no guarantee. None, just a shot. And that's receding for an awful lot of Americans, that shot. There's a lot of reasons why I'm a big fan of Andrew's. One of them is we both own Corvettes. Mine's a 67, his is a 75. I think I can kick it, anyway. Mine's better looking. I got mine ferrying cars back and forth from the Mannheim Auto Auction to make money on the weekends to fill up people's lots in the dealerships in Delaware. And he took care of his working in a garage in Queens. We still drive them. We still maintain them. I was asked by somebody about 6 months ago why I still drive the car. My son's had it rebuilt. My son Bo, before he died, had it, the engine rebuilt. And I said, because it reminds me. I said, what does it remind you of? It reminds me of the notion of possibilities. Anything's possible. When I was a kid, the idea that I could own a Corvette was viewed as impossible. It took me to law school. But it's about possibilities. That's what I love about the party. But I'm worried we're losing it. I've spent more time with Xi Jinping, the leader of China, than any world leader. I've had 25 hours of private dinners with him around China, 17,000 miles traveling with him, and about 5,000 miles traveling with the United States, with just he and I and an interpreter, a simultaneous interpreter. And we're in a town called Chengdu on the Tibetan Tibetan Plateau. And he looked at me and said, can you define America for me, Mr. Vice President? And I said, yes, I can. In one word, and I mean this sincerely. Possibilities. Unlike any other nation in the world, we have fed off the notion that anything is possible in America. Anything at all. And that's not hyperbole. That's who we are. Anything is possible. And folks, it takes women and men with some vision to remind us who we are. Remind us of what is possible. I don't have to tell anyone in this audience that all the values I just talked about are under siege by this administration. This is not your father's Republican Party. This is a different deal. They are not who we are. They're not who America is. But what they are doing is they're sending a vision of America around the world that's distorted, that's damaging, that is hurting us with this phony populism and this fake nationalism. It's designed, instead of having governor do his job, it's designed to be able to step back and let the wealthy and the powerful control, and then blame it on the other, the immigrant, the black, the woman. That's what this is about. And that's everything that you are not and everything Andrew is not. That's not who we are. We have an obligation. In my view, we have an obligation as a party. Woodrow Wilson said it best. He said, a party is worth no more than that for which it stands. So what do we stand for? What do we stand for? Because the American public, as much as they don't like the present administration, I want to hear a definition again of who we are. And we're being told by many that we have to make what I call a false choice. Do we yield only to our progressive values, or do we work on those things that affect high school educated working people who are under siege, as if they're different? Where I come from, there is no difference. You don't have to choose between your heart and your soul. It's a phony debate. Folks, in the 36 years that I sat in the United States Senate, I was rated, depending these ratings agencies, between the 4th and the 7th most liberal member of the United States Senate. So I take a backseat to no one on my progressive values. No one. Zero. No one. I got involved in politics because of civil rights. I stayed involved in politics because of women's rights. I've been involved in politics because of the abuse of power internationally. So I take a backseat to no one. And by the way, Andrew Cuomo has never backed away from his progressive principles, not one single time. And at the same time, he's able to do what we seem to have forgotten. Focus on the needs of high school educated, hard-working people who get further and further behind. The income gap in America is worse than it's ever been since 1915. Democracies cannot be sustained with that kind of difference. And everything he's done. But we make it sound today in some of the debates around the country. And I think I've gone into more races since we got out of office than any other single person, because I made a commitment when I decided not to run that I would do everything in my power to win back the House and the Senate and the governor's seats around the country. And I want to tell you, most people out there, like New York, they understand there's not a distinction. There's not a distinction between our fundamental progressive values and the needs, the practical needs of hardworking people. You know, just look at his record. He, along with all of you, legalized marriage in the United States of America, in the state of New York, long before anybody and most people even wanted to talk about it. I already mentioned the most comprehensive state-paid family leave program in the nation. Why? That goes to standard of living. I remember coming up here when he started the effort for the national debate on raising the minimum wage. We were debating about the minimum wage being raised to $7. You said 15. You did it. You did it. When the Republican Party is cowered by the NRA, their handmaiden, they send their sympathies to those thousands of people who are killed needlessly every year. They very proudly, in the Bush administration, struck down something I worked for 10 years to get done, and it got done. And it only lasted 10 years because I had to have it, when I got it passed, eliminating assault weapons, making sure that there couldn't be background checks, the whole thing. Most comprehensive gun control in the history of America. And but for a couple of hanging chads in Florida, it would still have been the law. But what happened? When every other governor is around going, oh, I know, I care so much. What did Andrew and what did you do? You took them on and you beat them. You beat them. You know, it's all about giving hard-working folks just a fighting chance. And to have a fighting chance, you have to have access to a decent education. You have to have access to be able to live in a safe neighborhood. You got to be in a position where you can just do your job and make it. You know, in this country, there are over 24 million people who are the equivalent of making hamburgers who have to sign non-compete agreements. Can you believe that? Or the majority of the Fortune 500 companies actually in your contract make you commit that you will not discuss your salary with anyone else in the corporation? What possible economic rationale is there for that, other than to deprive ordinary, hard-working people their ability to bargain for their worth? You know, the thing that changed America was the turn of the 20th century, 19th century, 20th century. It was called non-means-tested free education for 12 years. The first industrial nation in the world to provide that. Allowed us to leap ahead of all the rest of the world. The rest of the world's caught up. We're in the midst of a fourth industrial revolution. Digitalization, Moore's Law, artificial intelligence. An awful lot of middle-class folks, your parents, maybe some of you, are wondering whether or not there'll be a job, a middle-class job for me in a year or 2 or 3 or 5. I grew up in a little steel town called Claymont, Delaware. A guy I grew up with, went to grade school, Holy Rosie with. He went on to the public high school. I went to the Catholic prep school. He didn't go to college, I did. But he was an independent trucker. His name is Tony. I saw him at Christmas time. I said, Tony, how you doing, pal? He grabbed my cheek, and the Secret Service knew he shot him. He said, Joey. He said, only guys like you never worked in their life can still be working. He was an independent trucker, maybe between 80 and 120,000 bucks a year, busting his neck. His son does the same thing. I said, how's Tony? He said, he's in trouble, Joey. I said, can I do anything? I thought maybe he was ill or something. He said, no. He said, he's driving Joey. But he said he knows he's not going to have a job in 5 years. Even some in our party have become so elitist. We don't think ordinary people understand what's going on. Because in 5 years, supposedly, they're going to be all driverless trucks. That's how the highways are being built. So here's the guy, busted his neck his whole life, has 4 kids, lives a middle-class life, and wonders, what am I going to do in 5 years? We got to talk to these people. We got to listen. Do you realize there's about 150 to 200,000 people no longer in sales that made an average of $43,000 a year just in the last year and a half? Because of a thing called Amazon? I'm not saying you stop progress, but guess what? All of a sudden, they have no job. They have families. They played by the rules. Do we talk to them? Do we tell them what we can do? My dad used to say, I don't expect the government to solve my problems, Joey, but I expect them at least to understand them. At least understand them. So folks, if we're setting up an education system today, would anybody say that 12 years is enough? Raise your hand if you think 12 years is enough for the 21st century going into 2020. I did a report for the president. The president used to love the State of the Unions because he got to surprise me every damn one. If you notice, he'd turn and say, and Joe is going to do. Never tell me about it. One of those years, the 5th year, and he said, Joe is going to do a study on jobs of the future. Okay, Mr. President, no problem. Or Joe's going to do the moonshot. Or Joe's going to do the Recovery Act. The good news is when he gave me those jobs, he gave me the authority to do them. But the point is this. 6 out of 10 jobs by the year 2020 require something beyond a high school education. 6 out of 10 jobs, only going to increase. The rest of the world and the United States of America twiddles its thumbs and wonder, what should we do? And this administration cuts funding for college and cuts student aid programs and all the rest. But what's your governor do? You stand up and talk about the Excelsior Scholarship. You're doing what we should be doing as a nation. College should be free. Free. State universities. And by the way, we can afford it. You're doing it here in the state. By the way, if you made every single person that qualified in America to go to community college, you'd cut the cost of college in half. It would cost $6 billion a year. You'd go from 6 to 9 million people in community college. You'd raise the GDP by 0.2% per year. You say, oh my God, there goes that big spending Democrat Biden, another $6 billion. For 4-year college and state universities, it's around $40 billion. Guys, there are $1.34 trillion in tax expenditures out there. Fancy word for saying loopholes. I challenge anyone to justify, based on the rationale for them, either promoting a social good, like charitable contributions, or generating people taking chances to create productivity, like capital gains. I challenge anyone to tell me how more than $800 billion is justified. If I eliminated one, just one, I didn't know it existed. When I did my financial disclosure as vice president, a lot of my colleagues got a kick out of the headline in the Washington Post that said, quote, it's probable no man has ever assumed the office of vice president with fewer assets than Joe Biden. Because I made a commitment I'd never own a stock or a bond, I'd never be involved in a business venture, I'd never accept an honoraria. I kept the promise, and I sent my kids to private universities, and my net worth is what it was when I started, $55,000 to $150,000. But here's the point. I didn't know a thing called stepped-up basis. I hope you do. I do now. I sold a book. But here's the deal. If you make a capital gain, and God forbid you're on your way to turn it in, and you get hit by a truck, gets left to your daughter or son, they pay nothing. It's not inheritance tax. It was a tax due 2 minutes before you died. Nothing to do with inheritance tax. It's worth $17 billion out of that $1.34 trillion. Just $17 billion. If you eliminate that one thing, I could put every single solitary kid in community college, increase the GDP by 0.2%, and have $11 billion left to reduce the deficit. Don't tell me we can't afford to take care of the middle class. And don't tell Andrew. Folks, you guys did all this, and he did all this along with Lieutenant Governor while improving the state's economic stability. Today, New York has over 8 million private sector jobs, more than any time in its history. The $10 billion deficit has been wiped out. This guy has vision, too. The Tappan Zee Bridge, built fast, under budget. You know, it wasn't too long ago, Vice President ruffled a few feathers when he said something about LaGuardia Airport. I took a little heat for that. What I said was true. The greatest city in the world cannot have third world airports. And so it made everybody mad. 2 weeks later, I was landing in Air Force Two at LaGuardia to do an event in the city, and the Air Force Two pilots called me up front and said, "Is it safe to land, Mr. Vice President?" No, not a joke. So we landed, and I came back, and usually there's law enforcement officers wanting their picture taken as we go up the steps. So there were 9 guys and women in those brown suits with a big reflective yellow tape around them. And I thought, oh, geez. I walked up, and the head of the union put his hand out and said, "Mr. Vice President, we heard what you said about LaGuardia." And I thought, oh, God. He said, "You're right. You're right." Well, look what you guys did. Look what the governor did. Took the effort to take this and 5 other airports, make them world-class airports. And guess what? In the process, creating thousands of middle-class jobs, increasing opportunity, bringing more folks to the state of New York. It's not rocket science, guys. It's not rocket science. We used to invest 4% of our GDP in infrastructure. We now do 0.2%. We're ranked 29th in the world in transportation. Look at China. God almighty. Well, folks, I'm going on too long, but I feel passionate about this. Let's face it, folks. Let me conclude by this. I admit, I have a deep personal friendship with Andrew and Chris, and if you excuse me for saying so, with you, Mom, as well. And so I'd do anything I could to justify coming to help. But this is an easy lift. This is an easy lift. Folks, there's a lot of ugliness in our politics right now. That means we're going to have to fight for the vision of the nation we know is possible. You know, one of the great things about coming to New York State is seeing, as corny as it sounds, the Statue of Liberty when you fly in. You know, it's a remindership that leadership isn't just about new airports and building bridges. No, the oldest vision in America is actually quite old. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. You say it so often, you learn it in school. It's like rote, but it's real. I mean, it is real. I was in Mumbai, India, as vice president, meeting with their industrial community, and I got a call from a guy named Lee Kuan Yew, former president of Singapore. And he was referred to as the Henry Kissinger of Asia. He wrote extensively on the future of Russia, the United States, China, and India. And he called and asked whether I'd stop and see him. He was 92. He died about 5 months later. And I was sitting with him, and we were talking about how rapidly Xi Jinping had consolidated power. This was at the time, remember that aircraft went down the Indian Ocean, never found the black box? And as I sat with him, I turned to him about 10 minutes into the conversation, and I said, "Mr. President, what is China doing now?" I meant organizationally. And he said something fascinating. He said, "China's in America looking for the buried black box." I looked at him like you're looking at me, like, what in the heck are you talking about? He said, they're looking for that box that contains the secrets that allows America to be the only nation in the history of the world ever to constantly be able to remake itself. The only nation in the world. And without one scintilla of exaggeration, I looked at him and I said, "Mr. President, I'm old enough now to tell you what, if they find that box, what they'll find in the box. 2 things. In America, no kid, no matter how good or bad a school they go to, is ever criticized for challenging orthodoxy. The way we make new things is we break old things. Nothing about the past is sacred if we can make it better. I said there's a second thing you'll find. From the late 1780s on, a constant, unrelenting wave of immigration from all parts of the world, occasionally interrupted by xenophobic instincts. He looked at me like I said something about a black box. He said, "How's that?" And I said, we've been able to think about this. I mean this sincerely. We've been able to cherry pick the best of every single culture in the world over the last 300 years. When my great-great-great-grandfather got on a coffin ship off the Cooley Peninsula in Ireland, George Finnegan got off, or Owen Finnegan on that ship. It took an enormous amount of courage. It took an enormous amount of optimism. It took an enormous amount of determination. There's a family probably in Guadalajara right now, sitting around a hand-hewn table. And the father's saying, I got a great idea. Let's sell everything we have. Give it to a coyote. They'll take us across the border, drop us in the desert, and the country doesn't want us. Maybe put us in prison. Won't that be fun? Think of the background of each of your families. It took courage. We got the best of every culture. We got people with determination, optimism, commitment, unrelenting, competitive spirit. That's what made us who we are. And I might add, we're the only industrial nation in the world that has a constant supply of new labor. Europe is in trouble. China. I got in trouble during the Romney campaign for predicting that China would drop its one-child policy because they could no longer compete. They went to 2 children, now 3. Because they're xenophobic, they cannot bring anyone else in. And they have more people retiring in the 2020s than working. They can't compete. Ladies and gentlemen, it's who we are. All just to give future generations a shot at the possibilities that exist here. It seems to me that's our obligation, to keep those possibilities alive and real for people. I think that's what the governor, lieutenant governor, all of you have done. Let me conclude by saying that when I got elected as a 29-year-old kid to the Senate, I wasn't old enough to be sworn in when I got elected. I had to wait 17 days to be eligible, be sworn in. And I was always referred to as the idealistic young optimist. Well, if you recall, the 8 years as vice president, whenever they read about the White House, they'd call me the White House optimist, like I was the new guy in town. I am an optimist because I've seen the history of the journey of the American people. And I give you my word as a Biden, I'm more optimistic today about America's chances in the 21st century than I've been any time in my entire life. And let me tell you why. We have the greatest agricultural resources in the world. We feed the world. 40% of China's arable land is polluted with cadmium. We are the most productive workers in the world, 3 times as productive as workers in Asia. We have the strongest military in the history of the world. We're the epicenter of energy for the 21st century. Not the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, not Argentina, not anywhere else in the world, North America. And by 2022, we'll produce more oil than any nation in the world, including Russia. And we have the ability to make sure that 50% of all the energy produced in the United States of America by 2030 is renewable energy. It's all within our wheelhouse. In addition to that, we're in a situation where we have more great research universities, now listen to me, than all the rest of the world combined. The entire, not a joke, because of a Republican, a guy named Dwight D. Eisenhower. When Sputnik went up, he set up what we'd never do today. He called it 20 wise men committee, a 20 wise person committee. And they said, invest in massive research investment in the government agencies. He said, no, we'll do some there, but let's invest in our college system. So look at, we're all, name me a single world-changing invention or discovery that's occurred in the last 20 years that didn't come out of the United States of America. Name me one. Name me one that has China or France or Russia or India stamped on it. It's because of our research universities. We have the best minds in the world. And folks, it's about time we pick our heads up. Remember who the hell we are as Americans. We can do anything. And it's time to get these guys out of our way. It's time to lead. And it's time to say, no more. We are moving on. We are changing the politics of this country. We are taking back control. God bless you all. Thanks for listening. Thank you. I mean it. It's ours. Take it back. Every time I'd walk out of my grandfather Ambrose Finnegan's house, he'd yell, Joey, keep the faith. And my grandmother would yell, no, Joey, spread it. Go spread the faith. Re-elect Andrew. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow, what a convention. First, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for your vote. I thank you for your support. I thank you for your friendship. I will not let you down. Thank you. 95%. I never got that in school. Thank you. It's been a great convention. And let's give a big round of applause to Chairman Byron Brown and the whole team that worked so hard to get it organized. Jay Jacobs, Mike Reich, everyone who made this possible. How about that Joe Biden? I love Joe Biden. He is the heart and soul. He is the heart and soul of the Democratic Party, and he really has been fantastic. A couple of points that I just want to clarify. He made a comment about his 67 Corvette and my 75 Corvette. He's right that the 67 is a better looking Corvette than my Corvette. That is true. He then went further and suggested that his car would actually beat my car in a race. And that was a low blow. And he doesn't know what I have under the hood. So I'll give him better looking, but he is not going to beat me down the quarter mile. That I can promise you. We had Tom Perez, the chairman, who was all fired up. And boy, is he a great spokesperson. Hillary Clinton. Wasn't she great? And what a difference it would be if she was president of the United States. Speaker Carl Hastie was magnificent in his comments. He was generous in his comments. He's right. I sat next to him in many, many budget discussions. He is a true believer. He's committed. He's a great negotiator. He's a great advocate. But he is also a good man and a brother of mine. And let's give him and all his colleagues a round of applause. To Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins. She is exactly right. During the budget discussions, Carl and I had to sit there, and we had a Republican Senate, and we had to fight for every inch that we got, and it's amazing what we actually accomplished when you remember we had a Republican Senate. And you've heard the list of all the progressive accomplishments that we've gone through. That was with a Republican Senate. Can you imagine what we're going to get done when we have a Democratic Senate under Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins? And that is going to happen this year. The ticket that you've nominated, Controller Tom DiNapoli, who I've worked with for 8 years, who is a great man. Let's give him a round of applause. We have our Lieutenant Governor, who's done a great job, who's a woman's champion, and Hillary's right in a place where it isn't easy, and that is very relevant because she has always been 100% pro-choice, pro-woman, pro-LGBTQ. There is no recent conversion. She's the genuine article. And even more, we have a candidate who's going to make history. She is going to be the first African-American female elected statewide. She's going to be a great attorney general, Tish James. And as a personal point of privilege, I have my family here today. I have my mom, who, well, I have more to say in a moment. My youngest, Michaela, the fire plug of the bunch. My sister Maria, my sister Margaret, the doctor, Mariana, my brothers-in-law, Howard and Brian. Let's give them a round of applause. You know, Mom, I was thinking this morning, and I heard you last night, and I heard Joe Biden talking about Dad. This morning I did CNN. I have a brother. He's not a natural brother. He's adopted. But we treat him like he's a natural brother. It's actually a funny story. He was found at our front door in a basket, and he was 16 years old. So he has certain development issues, but he does a morning show on CNN, and he's just going to, he announced today he's going to move to a nighttime, primetime talk show to further the political dialogue. And Mom, listening to you, what you've done with mentoring, what Maria has done with homelessness, what Christopher has done by bringing truth to the political arena, seeing what New York has accomplished over these past few years, seeing where we are, he is here, and he is smiling, and he is proud. To Mario Cuomo, the greatest governor in the history of the state of New York. Thank you. He loves you, Mom. Everybody loves you. Why was Tom Perez here? Why was Hillary Clinton here? Why was Joe Biden here? Because this is New York. And this election is very, very important. And literally, the nation is going to look to us. We are about to embark on the most consequential campaign in our lifetime. We are at a political crossroads, and our decisions and actions are going to define the soul of this state and the soul of this nation. Our challenge is twofold. First, we must continue to move our state forward as the progressive capital of the United States of America, because that's what we are. And at the same time, we must overcome the current national extreme conservative movement that is threatening this nation. Now, first, we must begin by getting our Democratic House in order. And we have to take a long look in the mirror, and we have to face the hard truth. And the hard truth is that in the last presidential election, Donald Trump and the right wing did not win. It's that the Democratic Party lost that election. Why did we lose the election? Because we lost the connection with who we are and why the middle class and working families made the Democratic Party home in the first place. That's what Joe Biden was talking about. Remembering who we are here, not just here, and why we were the home of the Democrats. It's not just a New York issue. It's a national problem. And the Democratic Party all across the country is still searching for its way forward. And that's why Chairman Perez's leadership is so important. But this is New York, and they're in New York because New York always led the way. Al Smith, FDR, when there were troubled times, people looked to New York to find the way forward, and we're going to fulfill that legacy again. Joe Biden asked the question. Joe Biden said, who are we as Democrats? I'll tell you who we are. We are the party of the real American values that made our country great. The principles of opportunity for all, the principle of acceptance of all, the principle that said we discriminate against no one. We are the party that holds dear the principle that we are Thank you. Thank you. We are night and day different than who they are. We are the party that holds dear the principle that we are at our strongest when we heed our better angels and we work together as one community. Let them be the party of division. We are the party of inclusion. Let them be the party that spreads fear. We are the party of hope and of love. But we also have to remember what made us great in the first place. And Chairman Perez said it. We are not a party of words. We're a party of action. Our platform is not theoretical. It is practical. We are not a party of elitists who are promulgating conceptual bromides. We are the party that enacts real-life solutions for real people with real problems in real time. We exist for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to make a difference in people's lives. Maybe the Republicans can play politics. Maybe for the Republicans, politics can be a parlor game or an intellectual exercise. Let's be honest, the Republicans don't need anything from government. They don't want anything from government. All they want is less. And they believe they are fine on their own. But for Democrats, what we accomplish or don't accomplish actually matters to our people. This is real life. It matters how much food is on the table, or whether they can pay the rent, or whether they can pay for medicine, or whether their child attends a quality public school, or whether their child can afford a college education. It matters whether they have a job. It matters how much the job pays. It matters if they have health care. It matters if they're afraid to go to the doctor because they can't pay the bill. It matters if they're a victim of discrimination or sexism or harassment. That's what the Democratic Party is all about. My father called himself a pragmatic progressive. I never liked the expression. You did. I never liked it, but we had an honest and open relationship, and he didn't care that I didn't like it. Progressive, because somewhere along the way, liberal became a dirty word. But pragmatic, because it made the point of accomplishment. We deliver practical progress for people in need. His famous campaign saying, "We campaign in poetry, but we govern in prose." It was the same point. We strive for the ideal, but we live in the real. And people want and need help now. And if anything, that is more true today than ever before. We are a society that demands immediate results in performance. Our computers must download in seconds. Information must be immediate. Our iPhones have to be state-of-the-art. We order a package and we expect it delivered the next day. We even demand more performance from ourselves. We wear watches that monitor our steps and our calories. And what people are saying is we want government that is held to the same standard. If it doesn't perform, if their lives aren't improved, that they are going to seek another solution. And what happened in the election is the middle class and the working families grew impatient with old-style government because it's out of pace with their lives. We need to adjust. It's the Democratic Party that must adjust. No more platitudes, no more posturing, no more delay, no more incompetence, no more hypotheticals, no more hyperbole. They want action. They want results, and they want actions and results now. They don't want pontification from an ivory tower. They want help in their lives. Why? Because they are suffering. The middle class has been going backwards for 30 years in terms of real wages. Their mortgage goes up, the vehicle cost goes up, their taxes go up, but they're staying flat, and they can't take it anymore. And the middle class in this country that voted for Trump didn't vote for Trump. They voted out of despair and desperation. They did it because they got tired of waiting for the Democratic Party to make a difference, and they grew impatient, and out of despair, they went for Trump. That's what we have to fix. The Democratic Party must counter the fool's gold sold by Trump, the constant tweet campaign promising immediate relief. The Democratic Party must reboot for the new reality. We must be the idea. We must be the party that has the ideas and the competence and the skill and the proven results to make life better. We can do it because we have done it. The Democratic success has always been based on big ideas and by getting them done. We are the party at our best when we are dreamers and doers. FDR's New Deal, LBJ's Great Society, Bill Clinton's new economy. That's what made the Democratic Party what it is. Transformative ideas that we got done. That is also why Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and Tom Perez are in New York. Because that's what you did, my friends. That's what this state did. New York State is a national model of the new democratic path. New York State shows progressive possibility because we got the job done, we delivered. No state in the nation has accomplished more for its people in a shorter period of time than our great state of New York. We were the progressive firsts. They watched us. They copied what we did here in New York. You are the Democratic Party at its best. You, working together, my legislative colleagues, led by Speaker Carl Heastie, led by Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and their accomplishments. Our county executives, Steve Ballone, Laura Curran, and our county executives all across the state, mayors, supervisors, all coming together and working as one to do what everyone else thought was impossible. And we made it a reality here in New York. But with all we've done, success breeds success. And we are making change, and big change, social change, economic change. It's happening, and it's happening fast, and people see it, and people feel it. But my friends, that is just the beginning. We are just getting our momentum, and when we have leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and we have that Democratic Senate, you watch what we're going to do. Now, our second task in the campaign is to challenge and overcome the radical conservative movement that dominates Washington and has infected the Republican Party all over the country. We see it in this state, too. Joe Biden is exactly right. This is not your father's Republican Party. At one time, New York State had elected officials who were moderate Republicans. They called themselves Rockefeller Republicans. They are gone. They are extinct. They went the way of the dodo bird. Today, the Albany Republicans all carry the Trump doctrine. They all drank the Trump, Ryan, McConnell Kool-Aid. And their radical assault is draconian and all-encompassing. Their vision, if you listen to them, is to take us back to their great old American days, when America was great. They think America was great when women were subordinate and when minorities were disenfranchised and when the big private market corporations ruled the land and when labor was voiceless. That's the America they want to take us back to. And we are not going back, ever. And my friends, everything we have accomplished in New York, everything, they oppose. Just look at the facts. We're the first big state to pass marriage equality, and our passage created a national tide for justice. And we changed the difference in this nation on that issue. Make no mistake, when New York State acts, the nation notices. I don't want to be the arrogant New Yorker, but I'm the arrogant New Yorker. New York State is different. When New York acts, the nation follows. We passed marriage equality, and it went across the nation like a fire through dry grass. They opposed marriage equality when we did it. And now they want to treat the LGBTQ community as second-class citizens, while we want to move forward and pass gender. We led the nation in raising the minimum wage to the highest in history, $15. They want to do away with the law, while we want to advance the fight against income inequality by making sure a hard day's work is rewarded with a livable wage. They are using their stacked Supreme Court to attack the continued existence of the labor movement. They want more power for management. Well, you know what? We are the most unionized state in the nation, and we are proud of it. And thank you. But we want to end the convention before we get to 4 more years. And we are proud that we're the most unionized state. And that's why we are proposing groundbreaking laws to protect the labor unions in this state, and we're going to pass them this year. And I want everyone to remember, it is the labor unions that built and grow the middle class and safeguard workers. That has always been the way, and that's why we support them 100%. We all owe labor unions a debt of gratitude, and let's show them and say thank you. While they are attacking the public education system, we're doing the exact opposite. We are funding public education at the highest level in this state's history, and in fact, we lead the nation in the highest level of funding per pupil in the United States of America, and we are proud of it. But now in this state, we want to take the next step, and we want to go even further. Because the progressive truth is that 50 years after Brown versus Board of Education, we still have 2 education systems in this state, one for the rich and one for the poor. That is the truth. And the sad truth is that too often a poor minority child is condemned to a second-class school, often in a rich school district. We need to raise the bar higher. And we need a new advocacy grassroots movement. We need to get parents engaged. It's not a question of just how much we're funding the system. It's more of a question of how much we are funding individual schools and how we are distributing those funds and how fairly we're distributing those funds. We have 5,000 schools in this state. We have 1,600 schools in New York City. The question we have to answer is how much are we giving to the rich schools and how much are we giving to the poorer schools? My 2 cents is I believe the poor schools should be the #1 priority, and we should put our money where our mouth is as Democrats and make sure every child, rich and poor, black and white, urban and rural, has the same high-quality education, and we end funding disparity, and we start a new movement of education funding equity in this state, so we make sure the money is going to where the money is needed most. They are seeking to increase criminal penalties, and their only answer is to put more people in jail. That's their answer for everything. let alone that we already put more people in jail than any industrialized nation on the globe. We believe it's a waste of life and a waste of money. That's why we passed, together with the Speaker's leadership, Raise the Age. That's why we believe in alternatives to incarceration. And that's why we are proud to say we closed more prisons in New York State than any administration in the history of the state of New York. We seek to protect the environment, and they seek to abuse it. The extreme conservatives defy science, reason, logic, fact, and circumstance. They not only ignore the obvious, undeniable impact of climate change, but they continue to degrade our environment. They want to increase fossil fuels, oblivious to the poisoning of the nation. And we want to end all coal plants in New York by 2020. We lead the nation in renewable development, conservation, and banning fracking, and we're going to set the bar even higher. Clean technology is the sustainable economy, and its home is going to be in the state of New York. The president has now proposed offshore drilling because they care nothing about the carbon footprint, and they learned nothing from the BP oil spill. We will pass a law prohibiting it, and we will take them to court challenging it, because I want the president to hear me clearly. There is no how, no way there's going to be offshore drilling in New York, period. Now, when President Trump was campaigning for office and he was trying to seduce the middle class, he promised a $1.5 trillion infrastructure program. Do you remember that? In truth, as soon as he got into office, he gave that $1.5 trillion to the richest 1% of Americans in his tax reform Christmas giveaway. Well, we did the exact opposite. We embarked on the most aggressive building program in the nation, $100 billion, building a new LaGuardia Airport, a new JFK Airport, a new Rochester Airport, a new Syracuse Airport, a new Plattsburgh Airport, Elmira Airport, Ithaca Airport, a revitalized Buffalo, a new Expo Center in Syracuse, a new Kosciuszko Bridge, a new Tappan Zee Bridge, a new Long Island Railroad right here on Long Island, a new Moynihan-Farley train station, a new Rochester train station, and we're going to be the first state to have 100% high-speed broadband coverage from one end of the state to the other. And we did all that work with quality union labor. And my friends, we created over 1 million private sector quality jobs to bring this state to the highest number of jobs in history, $8.2 million, bringing unemployment down in every region in the state. And now that we know that it works, and now that we know our success over the next term, we're going to do even more. And we're going to go even further. And we're going to invest $150 billion in making this the greatest state on the globe and creating more good middle-class jobs. The president is hell-bent on his anti-American agenda to deport new immigrants. Just last week, he called them animals. This from the president of the United States, calling people animals. He's going so far as to try to deport young people who were born in this country, young people who know no home besides America. First of all, it is the height of hypocrisy to attack immigration, because unless the Trumps were members of the Navajo, Sioux, Apache, Iroquois, or Seneca tribes, then the Trumps are immigrants too, because we are all immigrants. We all came from somewhere else to join the family of New York. How short our memory. But we remember here in New York, and we don't think that diversity is something to be afraid of. We think diversity is a strength. We think it makes us stronger and better. And New York is going to do the exact opposite of Washington. We're going to protect our new immigrants against this assault by providing legal counsel before anyone is deported, and we're going to invest in our young people, providing them an affordable higher education by passing the DREAM Act, because we believe they are part of New York's future. An extension of their philosophy was the abandonment of the people of Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. Just ask Assemblyman Marcus Crespo, Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. We were on the first plane down after the hurricane. It was terrible. Well, Mr. President, I have a civics lesson for you. Puerto Ricans are American citizens just like you and me, and they deserved better. There are no second-class American citizens, but don't you worry. New Yorkers will step up, and New Yorkers will come to the rescue, because they are our brothers and sisters. And look, I wish I could say to you, well, they're seeing the errors of their ways. They see the division, and they see the fear. They see the increase in racism. They see the increase in the number of KKK groups. They see the increase in the number of anti-Semitic attacks, and they're backing off. They're not. If anything, they're taking their radical agenda forward even faster. Today, Washington is deaf, dumb, and blind to this country's current reality. The scourge of sexual harassment that has been demonstrated from coast to coast across every industry and every institution, and yet the silence from Washington is deafening. Well, again, New York is leading the way. We just passed the strongest government sexual harassment policy in the United States, and now we're going to bring reform to the private sector as well, because sexual harassment of women is real, it is undeniable, and this is the moment in history to make the reform and end it once and for all, and New York is going to be the state to do it. It ends here, and it ends now. My friends, the truth is Trump used the middle class in his campaign. And the truth is Trump is abusing them in his government. Trump's tax reform plan ends state and local tax deductibility, which means our income taxes and property taxes are going to go up about 30% in this state. Unbelievably, the Republican congressional delegation supported this tax increase on New Yorkers. Now, New York is doing the exact opposite. We made our tax code the most progressive, with top earners paying their fair share. Our millionaires tax is the second highest in the nation and the highest in the East. And at the same time, we're lowering taxes on the middle class to the lowest level in over 50 years. That's smart taxation. We passed a property tax cap that limits the increase on property taxes to 2% because it's a regressive tax in the first place. Now, if the Washington Republicans' tax increase goes through, it will wipe out all the progress that we have made over these past 7 years. There are only 12 states that pay the tax penalty. They are all Democratic states. They are all states that voted against Trump. This is political retaliation. It's not tax policy. It's old-fashioned, nasty, illegal political retribution. And we're going to sue. We'll stop it. It's unconstitutional. And we're going to hold every Republican in this state accountable in November for their tax assault on New York. Now, talking about the current issues that they are blind to, Washington has also been blind to the scourge of gun violence. Mass shootings now seem to occur on a weekly basis. Last week it was Santa Fe, Texas. Another 10 innocents were massacred. I was watching television. A young girl from the Santa Fe High School was interviewed, and she was asked if she was surprised that it happened in her school. You know what she said? She said, no, it's happening everywhere. How sad a reality. Look how far we have sunk. Why can't our national leaders be as smart as our high school students? The answer is because they are a wholly owned subsidiary of the NRA. They sold their soul and they sold their conscience for political contributions. Their answer to gun violence is more guns. They live in a state of denial. Well, we live in the state of New York. And New York has already led the nation in gun safety when we passed the SAFE Act 5 years ago after the Sandy Hook massacre, because we said enough is enough. The SAFE Act, my friends, the SAFE Act 5 years ago did everything that they are still seeking to accomplish in this nation today. It banned military-style assault weapons. It banned clips with more than 10 bullets. It set up a mental health database, and it closed the gun show loophole. And you know what else is important about the SAFE Act? Is what it didn't do. All these threats and all these fears you hear from the NRA, it's a slippery slope. They're going to come and take your gun. It never happened. Well, legal gun owners won't be able to get a gun. It never happened. Legal gun owners, sportsmen, hunters, all can buy as many guns as they want. None of the NRA threats were ever true. And our SAFE Act proved the fallacy of their argument. But now New York is going to lead the way forward again, because we're going to take our SAFE Act and we're going to take it to the next level by increasing the waiting period for background checks from 3 days to 10 days, passing a red flag law, and raising the minimum age to purchase a gun to 21. Common sense gun safety is possible. New York did it. This nation can do it. Follow New York. And of all these issues, this one is literally a matter of life and death. The extreme conservative allegiance to the NRA over the lives of American citizens is the most cynical political act in modern history. I say to Washington, open your eyes. Look at the reality. People are dying. Do something. You are elected to lead, so lead. Your inaction is just short of madness. To take no action after Santa Fe High School is madness. To take no action after Parkland, Florida is madness. To take no action after the church massacre in Texas is madness. To take no action after the Orlando nightclub shooting is madness. To take no action after Sandy Hook, Fort Hood, Virginia Tech, Columbine, it is madness. How many lives must be lost just since President Trump took office? 21,149 lives left to senseless gun violence. Mr. President, I ask you today, how many innocent lives must be lost before you will stand up and act? It must end. It must end. And it won't end, my friends, I'm sorry to say, until we end it. Because Washington is not going to do it until we change Washington. And that's what this convention is all about at the end of the day. That's our mission for this campaign. First, to show the middle class that the Democratic Party is the progressive party of results. Continue to move the state forward. And second, to fight back against the current extreme conservative domination of Washington. The battle lines are drawn. We know what we have to do. The Republicans are meeting at their convention as we're meeting at our convention. The Republicans in this state put at the top of their ticket a Trump mini-me. He's anti-woman, anti-LGBTQ, anti-gun safety, anti-immigration, anti-education equity, and pro-Trump's New York tax increases. All he is a banner carrier for the extreme conservative movement. We're going to defeat their ideology in every electoral race all across this state. We're going to come together and work together like we never have before, more coordinated, more unified. It's not a small task, but we are not a small state. It's a challenge, but we are up to it. That's why Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Tom Perez were here today. They know we can do it. They know what we can do when we are united and we are energized. And they know what we're going to do. Because we're going to rise up, fight back, and move forward by challenging every Republican House seat from Montauk to Niagara Falls. We're going to rise up, fight back, and move forward by electing a clear, functional majority of Democrats to the state Senate. We're going to rise up and fight back and move forward by electing more Democrats to the New York State Assembly. We're going to rise up, fight back, and move forward by making history and electing Tish James, the first African-American woman elected statewide in history. We're going to rise up and fight back and move forward by electing Kathy Hochul, our Western New York champion, our women's champion. As Lieutenant Governor, we're going to rise up, fight back, and move forward by electing Tom DiNapoli for another term as our great controller. We're going to rise up, fight back, and move forward by electing a Democratic Congress to stop this conservative freight train and stop this president. We're going to rise up, fight back, and move forward by making New York State a model of progressive policy and action. And today, more united, more energized, more mobilized than we've ever been, we're going to send Washington a message that their government demeans us, that they degrade the people of this state, that we are better than this. We are smarter, stronger, fairer than they would make us. And we will not allow them to lower us. New York is going to raise us, because New York is the alternative state to Trump's America. Let's show them how we do it. Let's do it together. Let's lead New York forward and set an example for this nation. Thank you, and God bless you.